Something inside me has always been there. But now it's awake. And I need help.
The belonging you seek is not behind you. It is ahead.
The Force is strong in my family. My father has it. I have it. My sister has it. You have that power too.
When I found you, I saw raw, untamed power. And beyond that, something truly special. I was raised to do one thing, but I've got nothing to fight for.
We're not alone. Good people will fight if we lead them.
The Force. It's calling to you. Just let it in.
Well, what is happening, Star Wars fans? Welcome back to D-WIZZLE's podcast. This is episode 45. If you guys are new to my channel, welcome. This is a podcast channel talking about all the things in the world of movies. So if you guys love talking about film and enjoy what I do, please hit that thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. And I'd like to thank you guys for helping me get to 100 subscribers. Couldn't have done this without you guys. Let's get to 150 subscribers. But yeah, anyway, hit that bell to be notified on future videos I'll be doing. But today, we are journeying back into a galaxy far, far away with a very, very special topic we have to discuss today. Joining with me, we have fellow YouTuber Ruby Grooby.
Hey, what's going on, guys?
We have fellow YouTuber Kosa Nation.
What's up?
And we have Beefalo.
I'm the nation's favorite jester. Hello, everyone.
The non-YouTuber.
Well, I make content, not on YouTube.
Okay, that's true.
Alright, so, if you guys have been following up with what's going on in Star Wars nowadays, it seems things have been calming down a little bit. But there is one specific rumor that has been going around, making the press recently. Has to do with a set of films that people love to hate and hate to love, and that is the Star Wars sequel trilogy. There has been rumors going around that Disney and Lucasfilm is considering to wipe the sequel trilogy from canon. And I was in complete and utter shock when I saw this. I didn't know.
Big news.
Yeah, very big news. So I didn't know how to feel about it the first time I heard about this. I was taking this with a grain of salt, being like, okay, this is just another one of those articles that trying to figure out something to write about, because nothing's going on in movies right now since the pandemic. But I kept hearing this rumor over and over again from different social media and like whatever people on YouTube talking about this. So I decided to put in my 2 cents with some panelists and see how they feel about this. So this is just a discussion on how we feel about the sequel trilogy possibly being taken away from canon. Are we for or against it? We're just gonna have a conversation about it. Have some points about on both sides, whether we want it to still be canon or whether it shouldn't still be canon. We have some points here and there, but we're just going to casually talk about them. But before we get into this discussion, I would like to go around the table and I just want to know, and I want the viewers to know up front, how do we generally stand on this? Do we want the sequel trilogy to still be canon, or do we want to be wiped away from canon? Ruby, I'm gonna start with you. How do you feel about it?
Uh, okay, well, this this kind of hurts me a little bit because I do enjoy, overall, as a trilogy, it's fine. There's only like one bad entry. Um, but I do enjoy The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi for what they have. But at the same time, it would make more sense if they did remove it from canon. That's just me though. I do enjoy Force Awakens and Last Jedi, but I do think that sequel trilogy should overall be removed from canon.
Okay. How about you, Kosa? What's your stance on it?
Oh, so very mixed bag on this. Like, because of things that have happened, you would have to change actors and, you know, actresses and everything in order to completely retcon and revisit the sequels. So I mean, I feel like it could be revisited. Certain things could be revised, particularly in Rise of Skywalker, but I don't think it should be outright deleted from canon.
Okay. And what about you, Beef? How do you feel about this?
My parents raised me to not be a coward, so I think they should be canon and we should face the consequences of our actions. We asked for this as a fan base, and so we've got to deal with the fact that we have one of the least coherent trilogies I've seen in a very long time, where there's no unifying ideas, and I feel like you can see a lot of different writing room ideas thrown to the table in desperate attempts that something will work and please like both the audience and the casual audience and the fan base. So I think Disney should roll with it. You made this great, now you got to lie in it. I'm going to defend this with several points.
All right. And as for me, this is also a tough one for me. As you guys know, I don't love the sequel trilogy, but I do think there's a lot of great things in the trilogy. But as Beef said, it doesn't come together as a trilogy, and it's inconsistent with lore that was established in the previous movies and other stuff in the novels and games and whatnot. You guys, if you guys have followed my channel, you guys know I love The Force Awakens. It is one of my favorite Star Wars films, and to this day. So I will defend that movie till the day I die. The Last Jedi, I'm starting to come around on it a little bit. I didn't hate it as much as I did the first few times I watched it, but you know, the more I watch it, I start to appreciate certain aspects of the movie. But at the same time, I can acknowledge this is the movie where for most people, it broke Star Wars for a lot of people. And then we get to the Rise of Skywalker, where I feel like it was trying really hard to bring things back to where it was. You know, it's trying to fix the issues that the previous two had, but at the same time, it was a mess. It was a mess. They were trying too hard to please everyone, and it just ended up being a jumbled mess. And so, I don't know. I'll just say I don't want it to be wiped from canon. I don't. Because, you know, well, we'll get into details in a second, but it's like for us to wipe this trilogy from canon, we would have to put into question the other stuff that's important in Star Wars. Like, what makes this the complete and other breaking point, you know? It's like, I feel like we can recover from the mistakes of this. So, but at the same time, I kind of would understand if they want to do that because of how much it divided the fandom. But, yes, I don't want it to be wiped from canon. So, I think how we can go about this conversation. I guess we could start with which one do you guys want to start talking about? Do you want to talk about the reasons why it should or why it shouldn't?
Maybe start with the bad and then with the good.
Okay.
So why it should be and why it shouldn't be afterwards.
Okay, then yeah, let's just start with the reasons why we think it should be wiped from canon. So I wrote down some points, and I think the guys wrote down some points too. I don't know how much our points will line up, but so I'll just start with my points, and you guys can add on top of that. But my first point of why it could be a good idea for it to be wiped from canon is because there's no hype for the Disney era. There's no passion. It's not as much as the other films. Like, there's no talk about the sequel stuff. Like, there's no anticipation for that. Well, if there is, there's barely any word of anticipation for anything coming from the sequel era. So it's like if they're trying to build on top of what happened in the sequel trilogy, how much of the fan base will watch it at this point, or at least the die-hard Star Wars fans? How are they going to be willing to give it another chance after the sequel trilogy? That's one thing to put into question. Anything brought up with the sequels, as far as the die-hard fans, is burn it with fire, pretty much. So it's like, I don't know. It's like, how can you build on top of that if there's no excitement or anticipation for it? There may still be some people. There may be some people that want to see where it goes from there, but some people are just set in the ways like it's there's no redeeming at this point. I don't believe that, but there's some people that do. So that's like one of the big reasons. Like, how do you guys feel about that? Do you believe so?
So with the whole like hype factor, I gotta agree. Like, yeah, like here's where I am with Star Wars movies now. Is it's like I'm not really hyped for anything, but I'll go to see it because it's Star Wars, and then I'll see how I feel about it afterwards. But
so that's put into question because Solo is the first Star Wars film that underperformed. So it's like, is that even still a statement at this point? People will go see it because it's Star Wars.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. People, there are a lot of people that won't see it. Some people I've talked to are pretty much like, I'm not going to see it unless it's like a numbered film in the trilogy or something like that. Some people that I've talked to have been like, I'll go see it because it's Star Wars, and some people are like, I'll go see it if it piques my interest. So,
and then also keep in mind,
kind of like in the I'll go see it because it's Star Wars kind of bracket.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I am too. And also keep in mind that Rise of Skywalker, while it did make $1 billion, it's the least grossing of all 3 movies. So,
right.
And it's probably because I will only see it if there's numerical. It's a numerical Star Wars movie, and it's also because it's the last Skywalker film, so we want to see where it ends off. But
and I think it's also just because like people also wanted to see if Rise of Skywalker will make up for the mistakes that The Last Jedi made for them.
Right.
Because you could already tell the people that walked out of Last Jedi and said that they weren't going to see another Star Wars movie ever again, you already knew they were going to see Episode 9.
Right.
You knew they were going to in the first place.
Yeah.
Like, it didn't matter.
Yeah.
I'll say, too, that, like, since my passion for Star Wars has become a lot more of, like, a morbid curiosity because I want to know what's wrong with the new films, I think it's amazing that Disney has tarnished the reputation of the films that much. Because, as you said, the group that's people who want to see it just because it's Star Wars has dwindled a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I know people that are more skeptical of Star Wars and happy to be skeptical of Star Wars. I think that's good in some capacity, but it says something very sad when your own fan base has gone from one of the most, willing to invest in everything, from books to games to Funko Pops, I don't even know if I'm going to go to the film to see this one. I don't know what happens next. The amount of people I know who have seen The Force Awakens in The Last Jedi and not seen The Rise of Skywalker, or are missing one of the three in the trilogy, is actually abnormally large. For me, at least, I've never seen a trilogy broke up this much.
Mm-hmm.
And that, with like people viewing each film out of order or not viewing them at all.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it's like for the longest time we believed that, you know, Star Wars was the untouchable franchise. Like, no matter of the quality of the movies, people will go in droves to see it. The prequels that, you know, a lot of people hated at the time still was a financially successful franchise. So it's like, and people were anticipating, even though people were very disappointed with the Phantom Menace, they were willing to see Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith to see how it goes, you know. So it's like, I don't know. It's like now we're kind of put into question: will Star Wars still be successful if they still go through the timeline of the sequel trilogy? Like, how sad? It's very sad. You know?
Even though it's a minority of the fan base, the fact that people have seen the new sequel trilogy and have gone back and went, maybe the prequels weren't so bad after all, is alarming. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because now it's cool because they're getting this vindicated by history type of deal where people are going to actually watch the prequels and enjoy them and find new reasons to justify liking them. And maybe even, like for me, watching Clone Wars, it deepens my appreciation for Episode 3 or Episode 2, which is, to me, the worst one out of all of them. But the new trilogy is messed up enough good faith to make them go back and appreciate what they had, which is sad.
Yeah.
Terribly sad to me.
Yeah.
Way to go, you squandered all of it.
Soiled
You
it!
maniac!
Soiled it!
You
Soiled
burned it up!
Soiled it!
You
But,
damn us all to hell.
Good George Lucas name.
well, move on to my second point. This one is kind of just adding on top of the first one, but it's a really big reason, especially for the studio that owns Star Wars merchandise sales. Disney is all about their money. You know, it's like I'm a Disney guy. If you guys follow my channel, I'm a Disney guy. You know, Disney's always held a special place in my heart, but it doesn't make me overlook the fact that as a business model, Disney is willing to make some questionable decisions if it means making a bunch of money. So, if the sequel trilogy was the same quality that it was, but it made a bunch of bank, Disney wouldn't care what the fan base says. But considering the fact that not only is there a decline in box office, but when it comes to the main thing that Disney cares about is the toys, the clothes, all the merchandise, selling the merchandise from the sequel era. Nobody's buying anything from the sequel trilogy era, merchandise wise. It is staying up on the shelves, collecting dust. And then you see original trilogy and prequel merchandise getting taken from the shelves. People still are buying prequel and original trilogy merchandise, but the sequel trilogy stuff, not so much. Probably the best sales that the sequel trilogy is doing is the lightsabers. And even then, I don't know how much that's doing, because most people are just getting Rey's lightsaber, which is Luke and Anakin's lightsaber, so that's it. But as far as that's probably their best sales right now is the lightsabers. But as far as toys and clothes and, you know, I don't know what other merchandise you want to do, tea cups or whatever. No, the sequel trilogy stuff is not doing the sales that it should. And so,
it's really dire.
Yes, and when you're owned by a company that makes its living off of selling merchandise, and you're falling short on that, oh, they'll cut that off. They'll cut that off immediately.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like the main thing that's, as far as merchandise that's profitable, is the lightsabers. That's about it.
Yep, and then they're not even taking full advantage of that, because there's a bunch of lightsabers I'm seeing in the movies that they still have not produced in toy form. So I'm like, what are you doing?
Yeah. Outside of like Disney World, yeah.
Like,
what you doing, son?
yeah, I'm still waiting for Rey's yellow lightsaber. I'm still waiting for Rey's Swiss Army knife lightsaber. I'm still waiting for an authentic Luke Skywalker lightsaber. I'm still waiting for Leia's. Well, Leia's lights on a. Wait, no, they don't have Leia's lightsaber. Like, where is it?
No, they don't. Yeah.
Where is it?
All these other companies have tackled it.
Yeah, so I don't understand what the issue is. Like, so yeah. That's another major reason. I don't know if you guys have anything to add on that, or I just pretty much said it.
I mean, yeah, I mean, besides, like, they've done, like, a lot of different kinds of merchandise since the sequel trilogies come out, mainly in the form of, like, lightsabers. Like, the Black Series, like, figures have been relatively successful. Like, those as someone who works in retail, those sell out the fastest out of, like, any other kind of, like, merchandise that we would carry. But, like, besides that, it's probably just, like, lightsabers, and even then it's not any of the gimmicky kind. It's, like, more just the straightforward, like, this is from the movie kind of product. But besides that, nothing from the sequel trilogy I haven't really seen a lot of stuff from the sequel trilogy get sold. It's more like Lego sets or lightsabers or figures from the prequel trilogy that I see getting sold the most. But
yeah, Lego sets, lightsabers, and Kylo Ren's helmet.
Right, because everyone likes the helmets in Star Wars, and
Helmets,
that's understandable.
Yeah.
And the BB-8 figures.
Oh yeah, BB-8.
Yep.
I have a question for you, since you work in retail. Have you noticed that they've been? Have you observed if they're possibly packaging all the new trilogy stuff with old trilogy stuff, kind of make it a deal? So it's like, oh, you can get this old trilogy set with new trilogy things. Like, have you seen them try to push products like that?
No, I haven't seen that. I've only ever seen, like, them just be like, oh, with the figures, like, oh, you get this stuff, you get this figure, and then you get this figure, that's cool, or whatever. That being said, some of the Rise of Skywalker characters have not sold. But, no, the only things that I've really seen being bundled have been, like, because they're doing a bundle of, like, all the Star Wars Rebels stuff. That's, like, the only stuff I've ever seen get bundled. Besides that, they just do it as it is.
Well, that's kind of good, I suppose.
Yeah. All right. Sorry, what were you gonna say, though?
That is a shame on the merchandising end, though.
Yeah, I thought this would be an easy thing for them to do. Just like one of the simplest things they could do is just, have the quality of the movies and stuff be good enough where people want to buy toys. If that's what you really care about, but you couldn't even do that.
Because, like, Star Wars, even when it's bad, it's cool. Like, Star Wars has always been cool, and it's weird that people don't want to buy this cool thing. And that's oof.
Oof.
That's all I can say is just oof. If you've managed to take the coolness of Star Wars and soil it to the point where people don't even, like, look at it at a store, and it's all just the Funko Pop dimension, pretty much.
Yeah.
Jeez. I don't see much Rey merchandise, or Finn, or Poe. Except his Funkos.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've seen, like, Black Series figures, but, besides that, nothing.
Yeah. Okay. Moving on to my third point. Which, it's probably something that people won't think would affect the audience directly, but it's like, it would slowly affect it on the inside. But so it's like, so what I'm saying is the third point is the actor's experience doing these movies. So, like,
oh
yeah. So we'll say that The Force Awakens, for the most part, it was a good experience, because Star Wars is coming back again, and people are excited to just be in Star Wars again, and JJ's really easy to work with, so it's like, yeah, it's fine. So, Force Awakens, okay. But, Last Jedi on, you can just feel the exhaustion and how much this is taking a toll on the actors. You can just feel it on them. When I see interviews and stuff like that, there's not the passion that they had with The Force Awakens. And yes, you can probably argue that, oh, it's because it's the first time Star Wars came back in over 10 years, so people are excited. Yes, but they should have similar excitement with the next 2 installments, you know? It's like, you don't feel it. It almost feels like, I'm glad this is over. You know?
The infamous, what was your face at the end of Rise of Skywalker interview? Yep.
Exactly.
I mean, it's not only like it's just a known thing where they openly seem to resent the films and like the frustrations they had with the fan base as a result of each film's release. The actors, no, it's like that meme where it's just his smile, his optimism, gone. John Boyega was happy to be rid of the whole thing, and it's a complete opposite to Marvel actors, where those films seem to have people who don't want to leave those franchise films. It's such a weird inversion where they're like, "Oh, thank God, it's over."
Yeah, remember when Infinity War was almost going to come out, and they were celebrating, I think, their 10-year anniversary, and they were all doing this group photo, whatever, and they were doing interviews with all the actors. They all were so happy and excited to be there, you know. So it's
joy.
It's joy, and then you see the interviews when Rise of Skywalker was coming out, and everyone just was looking. Oh, yeah.
Like, oh, what exciting new adventures await Rose in the next installment? She's just like,
about
They
that.
literally put me in the fucking
You'll
pocket
have to
dimension.
find out.
yeah. I saw that and I was like, red flag.
Yeah. Now, it's already been well documented of Mark Hamill's experience. He's like the first one where people were starting to be like, okay, something's not right, because it's already been well documented. He fundamentally disagreed with everything Rian Johnson was doing. And then when you see him in interviews, and he's just really trying to you can feel he's trying to hold back his true thoughts about The Last Jedi. And then like, then people starting to, you know, give Daisy Ridley, Oscar Isaac, and John Boyega crap about their characters or whatever, and you just see that in their interviews as well. And then we are talking about Rose Tico, you know, giving the worst of all this, you know, and people abusing her on Twitter or whatever. It's like, this is fucking ridiculous. But it's just like, and then when The Rise of Skywalker was coming out and they were doing interviews about that, like, I heard them say, Daisy Ridley, John Boyega, and Oscar Isaac said they're not excited about coming back after Rise of Skywalker. They're not in a rush to go back. So,
They
like,
looked
what is
dead
this?
in interviews?
Huh?
Oh yeah.
So it's like, I mean, they didn't directly just say that out the blue, but it's like, they're pretty much alluding that they're not excited to go back.
They said it in business terms.
In business terms, in business terms, because, you know, they got to do that. Because they don't want to make Disney and Lucasfilm look bad. But it's just like, bruh, we can see right through that. Like, and then the audience, you know, even though we still deal with the casual movie-going audience that, you know, isn't aware of a lot of stuff, like, they're slowly starting to be more aware about, you know, actors and stuff like that. And so when they're seeing how these actors are, you know, how they're acting about these movies, like, it's going to be apparent that, okay, something, and they're hiding some stuff about the movie, like when they're asking certain questions like, oh, how's this going to go? And then they're like, well, that's something you gotta find out, or
they all seem to do that, like, kind of nervous laugh of like, oh,
yeah, like
there's a clear hesitance in every interview.
Exactly. Like, I'm remembering one out the gate when they had, like, most of the cast, like, doing one interview, and then the interviewer was like, they're trying to do something fun, like, show on your face the reaction after you saw Rise of Skywalker, and you saw everyone's face, and it was very concerning. It was very concerning.
Especially, like, John Boyega's.
Yep.
Well, what did he do? I don't remember. He either did, like, this kind of, like, concerned face, or he did, like, face palm. I'm trying to remember.
Yeah. So I'm like... So go ahead.
It makes me so curious about the production of these films, because I wonder... Because it's one thing to be like, okay, I'm having troubles with the audience, but I wonder if it's something on the production end, too, that made them miserable. Because you can deal with an audience at the the pay is well enough and you feel like you did a good enough job or working with good people. I wonder what went on. Like, I'd love to tell all about.
I mean, plus it was just. I feel like what also may have taken a toll on them was, kind of going back to the audience was, the audience. Like when it was announced, like there was a huge amount of people that were like upset when John Boyega was cast, and it seemed like he might be the main character of the trilogy. Everyone was so mad about it for some reason. I don't know why. I mean, I know a lot of it. Well, yeah, I know a lot of it was like racially fueled and everything, but like there was just a lot.
Right. That's another thing that that the actors don't want to deal with anymore is the fans. Like the fans can be draining, especially with Star Wars. Like they didn't want to deal with the abuse of the fans. Being like, if they don't like what they're doing, they're just gonna give them a bunch of shit. So I can see how that could be emotionally tolling on them. And then I say all this to say, like, even if they somehow found a way for them to come back to Star Wars, you're not gonna feel the same performance that you got from Force Awakens or whatever. You're not gonna feel that the same go around.
Yeah.
It's gonna be almost Harrison Ford going through the Star Wars movies, being like, I don't want to be here.
Yeah.
You're gonna feel
I feel like that entirely depends on who's in charge of everything, who's in charge of writing the stuff, who's in charge of directing. Like, if they got Dave Filoni to direct and, got, like, his writing team to do, like, the rebooted trilogy or something, I feel like you get, like, a lot more energy from the actors. Whereas, like, if you have this, what they've been doing, you're gonna get just the same amount of energy.
Yeah.
Because they know who's in charge, they know who's running the show, who's writing the scripts and everything, so.
Right.
I think a part of it, too, is that when you're an actor, you have to get really invested in your character. You start to, when you're performing, you get enough into the role to where you start to make objections on behalf of your character, or...
Right. Like Mark Hamill.
Why would they do that? Like, why would my character say this? And I feel like that is, like, the most pervasive issue with in all the interviews, is that they seem to be confused because Ryan and Abrams had two completely different directions that they wanted to go.
And that was so clear when Rise of Skywalker came out, and there was like so much course correction there.
And I think that I blame Disney for setting it up like this in the first place, because the idea of having a trilogy directed by three different directors sounds really cool on paper because you get three distinct visions. It's horrible in practice because you have actors that are coming in expecting one thing, getting something entirely different. And now they're dealing with the backlash from that. It's so unnecessary.
Though, to kind of like bounce off of that, I'm gonna say that the blame isn't entirely on Disney. It's also on the directors too, just because, J.J. Abrams could have stuck with what Rian Johnson did. He could have just kept rolling with the theme of you don't have to come from someone special to get your power, and he could have just kept with that. But instead, there was so much course correction in there, you're a Palpatine, your power comes from something special. Oh, Palpatine's back, so that we have this big overarching villain that's above Kylo Ren and Rey. If J.J. Abrams would have stuck with what Rian Johnson did, I feel like Rise of Skywalker would have been so much better. Or if they would have just stuck with Rian Johnson for Rise of Skywalker.
I feel like Ryan probably had a very particular vision for his film, which is I don't know if it's I don't know. That film has such a end of trilogy energy because of how narratively that film wraps up.
Well, the reason I feel like it seems so different is because of something that a comment that George Lucas makes when he's making the original films and the prequel trilogy. He says, Star Wars is all about family and the ties with family, whereas, Last Jedi kind of went against that. Yeah, because Rey, she doesn't come from this big family or whatever, at least in that movie.
She's a nobody.
She's a nobody. She's not like a Skywalker or a Palpatine in that movie. She's just Rey, which, goes against that whole family thing, which honestly, looking back on it, I kind of welcome that. But,
And on top of that, you're having the three main characters separate from each other again. even though their chemistry was some of the best things about The Force Awakens, and that enforces the whole family aspect because Rey and Finn, especially those two, find a family with each other along with Poe and everyone else.
Right.
And
yeah,
all of
that was a flaw there, that they should have had the characters together. But what was that, Ruby?
One thing I also wanted to add on about the theme about, like, Star Wars is about family. They talked about, like, in The Rise of Skywalker, some things are stronger than blood, and it's just like, okay, so that's just, like, completely saying, like, we're going to throw the theme about family, and we're going to throw it out the window.
Right, but they didn't.
They didn't entirely, but it's just, like, hearing that, like, execution-wise, it just does not sound right.
Well, yeah.
It's just, like, you end off the franchise, like, not as, like, a family, like, blood-related, and it's just, like, that's, like, the only way that we know it by.
Right.
Well, I think what they were trying to...
Once again, kind of looking back on, like, Last Jedi, I kind of welcome that, because, kind of going off of, like, those core three characters being a family, then, it's like, yeah, okay, they're the family for the trilogy and everything.
So
but
I think what
also,
they were...
it kind of feels deceptive because they said, like, oh, some things are stronger than blood, and yet this whole movie is about Rey being a Palpatine.
Right.
But then I think what they were trying to do at the end, which is why I think this is what they're trying to do with the Rey Skywalker crap, but it's like, I think they were trying to say that, even though Rey's bloodline is tied to the dark side and the Emperor, is that you can overcome that, Like,
right.
So I think that's what they're trying to do.
More generally, is found family, too. Like, she found her place as a Skywalker, not as a Palpatine.
Right.
She fought that.
And it's like when Luke was telling to Rey, it's like, Leia knew that I was the daughter of Palpatine, but she didn't say anything because Luke said because she saw your spirit. So I'm like, okay, I could kind of see that.
And
that does make sense in the whole, like, some things are stronger than blood, but
yeah,
it just feels weird when they focus the whole thing on the Palpatine family there. But what?
Yeah.
But yeah,
Well, it was a way to justify why Rey was so strong. I feel like it was like the writers needed to explain why was she so powerful. Because fans were asking that question for a while.
I was asking that for a while.
Yeah, but even then, like, with what Rian Johnson did, I liked it because it's like, they're pretty much saying you don't have to be a Skywalker or a Palpatine to be that strong or that gifted. You could just be the one-in-a-million person that, is just that strong or is that gifted.
Okay, guys, hold on. I love this, but I think I want to say that when we get to my fifth topic because that has to do with that. But I love this. Okay. I just want to I want to stay on topic. But yeah, in general, I think you guys are just saying that it's harder for actors to work when they have to deal with two different visions of a director and they're not on the same page. So that's going to show in their performance and stuff like that. So definitely agree with that. Okay, so number four. It's a fucking big one for me. Because we have to deal with the legacy of Kathleen Kennedy. Kathleen Kennedy. I'm not going to say anything bad about her producing skills because it's clear that she's good at her job because Steven Spielberg said himself that Kathleen Kennedy is one of the best producers he's ever had to work with. So I'm sure, I don't know Kathleen personally, and I try not to make any assumptions about her in her personal life or how she does her work. But it's clear that Kathleen was not the right person for the job to run Star Wars. She's probably good in other aspects of the film stuff, but not to overwhelm this universe. It should have been with someone who knows the universe very well, like a Dave Filoni. Even a Jon Favreau, even though he just started, you needed somebody who knew the world, who knew the universe, who knew these characters, who knew where stuff needed to be, Kathleen Kennedy was not that person. And so Kathleen Kennedy was doing what she thought Star Wars needed to be, which is what it never was. She's trying to push this agenda that the Force is female. We saw the t-shirts. The Force is female. She's putting her own personal, political agendas on these movies, and it doesn't flow well with the lore and the development of the characters already established. And then not just talking about the lore, we're just talking about on a business standpoint of these movies getting made, and it is a circus. It's a fucking circus. First, we already talked about the sequel trilogy, like how everything's all over the place with Rian Johnson and J.J. Abrams, butting heads with the visions. But you can't even get like the spin-off films right. You had directors change for Solo and Rogue One, and the quality of those movies suffered. Now I know there's fans of Rogue One and Solo out there, but you cannot deny that the quality of those movies could have been better and should have been better. And it's all because Kathleen Kennedy couldn't get her shit together and figure out what directors were right for the job. And so now, like, when they're trying to do these future projects for Star Wars, they can't stick with anything because they can't find good writers, they can't find good directors, or when they do, they change their mind and want to change how the format of the show and the movies are, and then we get into this jumbled mess, and then nothing gets released in a good fashion like the other Disney movies released. At first, I was against them doing 2 movies a year or a movie a year, because that ruins, like, it feels like they're just trying to shell out a product every year, and they're still doing that. But it's like, it still could have worked, because you see Kevin Feige releasing 3 movies a year with the MCU, so it can be done. But Kathleen is not doing her shit. She's not doing anything. Everything's all over the place. So it's like, this should be an easy thing for you to do, is figure out who needs to run what ship. We're supposed to have gotten the Obi-Wan spin-off show a long time ago. What's going on? And then there are these other projects that they were supposed to do, but it got canceled. And some of these projects, the fans actually want to see, but then they're prioritizing other things that's not as important. I personally like Solo, but that didn't mean I wanted a Solo movie. There was supposed to be a Boba Fett movie. It would have been better if there was a Bounty Hunter movie with Boba Fett and Solo. Should have done that, but no, they decided to do a Han Solo movie, even though nobody asked for it. And then nobody asked for a Cassian show. No one asked for a Cassian show. Regardless if you like Rogue One, nobody's clamoring for a Cassian show. So Kathleen Kennedy seems incompetent. And we know she's not. But it's just clear she's not right to run Lucasfilm. And if you keep the energy and legacy of Kathleen Kennedy looming overhead of Lucasfilm, you're never going to move on from that. The fans will never move on from that. As long as Kathleen Kennedy is running the ship, people are always going to be trepidatious about what's coming out from Star Wars. Anyway, that's my rant. Your thoughts on that?
Well, I was going to say...
Yeah, go ahead.
Actually, no, you can go ahead first. I'm saving my power for a comment. I'm going to make a moment.
I was going to say, kind of going to, like, that whole... The person in charge of this should know the lore and should be invested in lore for, like, that universe. I fully agree. Because, like, even, like, in other franchises, like, my favorite franchise to both love and hate, Transformers. The, Michael Bay movies, yeah, sure, some of them were successful and they have their fans, but the ones that showed, like, the most heart, character, and seemed to really pay attention to the source material were the ones that were, one that was made by the person that, like, actually grew up with the series, grew up with the franchise, loved it, knew what they were doing, and that was the Travis Knight film. Now, like, the same can go for Star Wars. Like, I keep telling people, if they would have had Dave Filoni directing the sequel trilogy, it would have been so much better, just because he knows the galaxy, he knows the universe, he knows the lore, and he knows probably what the fans would want to see in terms of it, or what should happen. But,
I think So my gripes with Kathleen Kennedy come from mainly the fact that, like, okay, as somebody who's very, like politically progressive, and I really, like, I'm very, very far, like, leaning into, like, social justice causes. I think the way Kathleen Kennedy handled everything, with the future is female, scared the fan base. I think that's we can all agree on that one. A lot of people who were traditional fans got scared. I think her leaning really hard into that, instead of, like, trying to introduce it gently and casual and, like, gradually, and also, like, doing it with equality. I was, like, doing a quality job at introducing these, like, more socially progressive ideas, I guess.
Yeah.
It's weird because there is a very vocal part of the fan base that's like, my Star Wars has been corrupted by the SJW community. And I feel like Kathleen Kennedy unfortunately brought that about with those comments, which is a shame because, like, of course, I'd love to see more female representation. Star Wars has, like, Princess Leia. Love that. But I just, when you're a corporate person that has these really tone-deaf attitude to the franchise, doesn't seem to know that much, and you're just saying these statements, you're going to upset a lot of people. And I have a problem with what Kathleen Kennedy is saying. I have a problem with her being a tone-deaf CEO, a tone-deaf executive working on a really, really beloved franchise. I have a problem with anyone of that caliber. And the thing is that with her at the helm, there's been so many questionable decisions. It's, of course, not everyone's going to be a Kevin Feige, where, like, there's a really huge connected universe that has a lot of love and soul put into it. Not everyone's going to be able to do that. But something more coherent than this, please God. You know, I fully agree that she shouldn't be running it for different reasons than most people on the internet, I would say, because I feel like it's not that she has a certain perspective, rather it's her tone deafness that gets to me.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
It's just, you didn't listen to the fans, you don't really care for or seem to care for this universe, and if you did, here's what everyone's asking for because it seems to fall into plausibility. I don't blame her for everything because, again, it's a very large scope, so I can't be like every publisher. But
yeah, I'm not saying everything is her fault, but, like, she...
Yeah, but, like, she definitely has a hand to this mess.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, I would argue, once again, that more of the blame falls on the directors. Just, you know, butting heads and, like, trying to, I want to do things this way, you know, Snoke dies in this movie. No, it shouldn't have happened. Now Palpatine has to come back, you know.
Well, I think that was Kathleen I don't know if it's Kathleen that arranged that, like, set up for the films where each film was done by a different director and had like a different vision.
Yeah, because originally Episode 9 was supposed to be directed by Colin Trevorrow.
Really? They were going to have 3 different directers?
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, it's possible because the original trilogy was 3 different directors.
And after Rian Johnson, they went no.
I mean, if they had a similar vision, if they were willing to basically improv and bounce off of each other's visions, then I feel like it would have worked.
Right.
But
that's why I say this.
They were so set on, like, this is my vision. If you do something different, I'm going to just course correct it to my vision. You know.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I say
out of necessity too.
Yeah. And that's why I say this all goes back to Kathleen Kennedy, because it's going to look bad on her. It's like, why did you hire Rian Johnson in the first place to do whatever he wanted? Didn't you tell these directors to do these certain things to be on the same page? Why?
Yeah. Didn't you have an outline?
Well,
JJ had an outline.
I feel like a lot of that, the opposite is going to happen for falling on Kathleen Kennedy. It's going to be, why did you hire J.J. Abrams again if you knew that he was going to just bring Palpatine back and do this for Rise of Skywalker? Rather than, like, them being upset about Rian Johnson, it's more going to be people being upset about J.J. for what he did in the last film.
Well, well, here's the lowdown with that, though. Because, okay, I'm not saying J.J. Abrams is not to blame at all, because there's some stuff he did where I'm like, you shouldn't have done that. One thing is, when he signed on to do Star Wars, he didn't want to do all 3 movies. He didn't want to do it. He left after The Force Awakens, so it left Lucasfilm in a tight situation. So they had to get, so they decided to get Rian Johnson and Colin Trevorrow at first. But for some reason, they told Rian Johnson he can do whatever he wanted, even though JJ had an outline for all 3 movies. He was supposed to be the George Lucas of the sequel trilogy, right? With Lawrence Kasdan. But instead they said, Rian Johnson, do whatever the hell you want. And then Colin Trevorrow is getting the crap from that, you know?
Yeah.
Because he had a vision for what he was going to do for that. But then they were like, no, they don't want you to do that. And then, like, even there's some stuff from Colin's script that is inconsistent with what Rian did. So it's like, that's the whole thing. If this is why I do kind of blame Kathleen Kennedy and Disney, because they knew how important these movies are, and they would know that enough to make sure that the directors and the writers are on the same page, or make sure.
I don't mean to interrupt. I do have a thing to say about that with like Disney knowing who to choose and like what they want and whatnot. I think they wanted to choose that based on how well the directors like directed their own movies.
Yeah.
Because like take like for example in comparison to Rian Johnson's movies and Colin Trevorrow's movies, like just like their most recent films before they went on to direct Episode 8 for Rian Johnson and what was set to be Episode 9 for Colin Trevorrow. Ryan had, what was it, Looper or something?
Looper, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that one was said to be a really good movie. Well, not really good, but like it was critically acclaimed.
Yeah, it was a really good movie.
I think
Colin Trevorrow's recent film, Jurassic World: Fallen Kingdom.
Ooh.
No. He didn't
so
direct.
well.
He didn't direct Fallen Kingdom. He directed the first Jurassic World.
Yeah, the first
Never mind,
Jurassic World.
we're good.
But like, it wasn't like overall like
It wasn't.
an amazing movie. It wasn't like
It wasn't
you know,
loved like the first
It
Jurassic
wasn't
Park.
loved by all people.
But it made $1
like-
billion.
But it did make $1 billion. But Disney was more focused on wanting to make. It was kind of weird because Disney is more of like they're wanting to make more money, but they went with better directors who went on to make better movies.
Yep. Right after
So
the last
that's why it was a little weird why they got rid of Colin Trevorrow, because I thought that the reason why they got rid of him was because of the performance from, or like the results from Fallen Kingdom.
Well, no, because he didn't. Yeah, he didn't direct that. He did write that.
Yeah, he didn't direct that. I know that now. Yeah.
Yeah, he did write it
what
though.
Or he didn't write it. Yeah.
No,
Colin
Colin did
directed
write
it.
Fallen Kingdom. Colin did write Fallen Kingdom with someone else.
Okay, so he wrote it, but he didn't direct it.
He didn't direct it.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was his writing that got him removed from the project of Episode
I
9
thought the
because
reason
they
why-
didn't like the ideas from Fallen Kingdom.
Right.
But
I
at the
thought
same
the
time,
reason,
it's like that
like,
shouldn't matter though, because like regardless of what they did in other movies, you have to look at the script they do now. You know, it's like, did they look at the script and be like, oh, that's good? Because good directors can make shit shows, and shitty directors can make good movies. So it's like
Right.
that shouldn't really matter as much.
Right.
Well, I thought the reason they removed Trevorrow was because of how Last Jedi was critically received.
That was part of
I
it,
thought-
and then Ryan's
Because I thought that
decision.
the reason was the reason being that like, oh, this film did well at the box office, but like this backlash is massive. It's a huge like tank for our publicity.
I feel like there was a
Abrams
new.
back because he's safe, and Trevorrow would have been more of an like it would have been different.
I feel like there was a number
Make it
of.
as co-
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It's not the reasoning being that there was like even though like yeah you're right, there's a number of issues. The main one was that like we need to get some sense of order here. Get the first guy back. Which
Yeah.
is kind of weird because Abrams couldn't do the whole trilogy because of like obligations to his own films. So if they brought him back for The Last Jedi, shouldn't they have just waited?
Well, yes, they should have waited, but Disney's like, no, we want it every year, every other year.
Well, I mean, the bottom line is they should have just followed the outline that was already set, because that's something that I feel like, you know, regardless of like how people feel about the prequel trilogy or the original trilogy, they give it credit in the fact that it had an outline. They knew well, okay, original trilogy not so much, but prequel trilogy, yes. Like it had an outline, it knew where it wanted to end, and it knew where it wanted to begin.
Well, even though with the original trilogy, at least George still overlooked the other two movies to an extent.
He did, yes.
So that's the thing. Like that, I know this is like we're kind of playing the blame game, but it's like we can't help it. It's like who's responsible for this? Who allowed them not to use the script or the outline that JJ did? Who allowed Ryan to do whatever he wanted? Who allowed Colin to go? Who? You know, there has to be a higher up that tells them what to do and what not to do with this, one of the biggest franchises in film history. Why did you not take more care of this?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of issues that added up to the sequel trilogy just not being as good as it could have. It feels like, they should have had someone overlooking it, but it also seems like when you look at how each of the films are different, I'm trying to figure out how to word this. It's like it feels like it did what was trying to do what the original trilogy was doing. Like not in the sense of like copying, because they basically did copy like what happened in the original trilogy, but like in the sense of like how the original trilogy was kind of going by the seat of its pants, at least for the first two films. But you know,
they want to replicate the organic creation process, but the thing is that process was aided by George Lucas's wife Harrison Ford's complaints and a number of people intervening on that script and the production of that film.
Right. Like you had, what was it? Was it Steven Spielberg that was like a part of the original trilogy? I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, the main thing I remember is Harrison Ford complaining about the writing and being like, you still get to read this shit, and like they improved it, and like they did a lot of improv because Ford didn't like what he was being told to say. They didn't like the script.
And that was magic in the bottle for A New Hope. That was magic in the bottle.
Right, like New Hope was like just its thing, and then Empire Strikes Back. If you look at the novels that were released at the time, like it was like no one really knew what was going on. But the original trilogy still turned out great because of the people that largely because of the people that they had overlooking it and monitoring its progress. Whereas this trilogy was kind of like it started off with a plan.
And you can tell that like Abrams had a very specific set of questions he wanted to ask and set up for foreshadow for the audience. And it's so weird to see Rian Johnson just completely abandon all of it. It's just like, no, fuck you.
It is, but it feels like they could have kept going from that. But instead, and that's what I feel like really made Rise of Skywalker so bad, was that, they just completely resisted what was going on in Rian Johnson's script and just were like, let's go back to this.
See, that's like Rise of Skywalker is bad for resisting Rian Johnson's script. I see it as Rian Johnson resisted Abrams' plan.
Yeah.
And so that correction was a necessity. That's my perspective on it, which is why I like The Rise of Skywalker more than The Last Jedi.
And that's why I'm saying that none of these confusion or miscommunication would have happened if you had a higher up making sure they're on the same page. So that's why I'm saying Kathleen Kennedy needs to be to blame. But
bottom line is this is too much fuckery.
Too much fuckery, exactly. Well, anyway, I'm getting to my final point of why the sequel trilogy should be erased from canon. It's the big thing. We talk about this all the time. The lore has been damaged from the sequel trilogy. The lore has been damaged. Regardless of if you like the sequel trilogy or if you don't, it is not consistent with what came before with the other movies and some of the other media like comic books and video games or whatever. Since there's this whole bunch of fuckery with the sequel trilogy of what clashing with visions and what the Force does and character motivations are this way, even though it was another way in another movie, it's a whole bunch of fuckery. It's like it will be so hard to just recover from all the inconsistencies and all the other stuff that the sequel trilogy did. I don't want to trash on The Last Jedi again. I don't, but it's just we gotta talk about it. The Last Jedi broke rules from the Star Wars lore. regardless of what Rian Johnson was trying to do. And me personally, who I don't hate The Last Jedi, and I kind of see what Rian was doing with some of his ideas, but he doesn't take advantage of those ideas. He just introduces an idea and leaves with it, and then you're just leaving certain aspects of the lore just like, wait, what the heck? Like, what now? You know, it's just from Leia from Leia flying in space. That doesn't make any sense. With Luke doing this Deus Ex Machina of force projecting from thousands of light years away. From the Rey being able to do all these force abilities without any training or any knowledge of the force. With you have this near omnipotent being and Snoke being able to sense everything except not being able to sense a lightsaber killing you right next to you, with having one of the most iconic protagonists, not only in Star Wars but in film history, Luke Skywalker, falling on his character development from Return of the Jedi so far. I'm not saying that he should be perfect, but for him to fall so low from where he was in Last Jedi without having the right explanations, you're just implying that stuff happened in between Return of the Jedi and Last Jedi, and then you're just introducing him doing this stuff that doesn't feel consistent without properly explaining to the audience why he feels this way. Feels like a betrayal of the lore. And then you're adding stuff on top of characters that shouldn't be added. Going back to Rogue One and Solo, it was not necessary for you to put in gaps in between movies. Is it nice to see some stuff? Sure, but there's some stuff that doesn't need to be there. We don't need to know every little detail of how Solo got to where he was. The only thing in Rogue One that was even worth talking about is the whole Death Star thing. Why is there a little area on the Death Star that's easy for people to just shoot and have it blow up? They address that, but anything else outside of that, unnecessary. So with having the lore all over the place, how are you going to recover from all that? How are you going to fix all that? How are you going to win back over the diehard fans that felt like you just crapped on their childhood, you know? I don't necessarily feel that way, but that's how a lot of fans feel. Lore has been destroyed. And then Rise of Skywalker, trying so hard to please everyone, made it even bigger of a mess. Having to bring back Palpatine because you prematurely killed Snoke in The Last Jedi, and then having to over-explain why Rey is so powerful. Oh, she's the granddaughter of Palpatine, even though that's not what we're led to assume in the prequels, that he even had a son. And it's like, and then your priorities with other characters that are not there, like Finn having force abilities, you barely utilize that. And then you have all these extra characters you're introduced in The Rise of Skywalker that's literally there to just do one thing and then they're gone. It's like, it's a freaking mess. It's a mess. Regardless of how you feel about the prequels, there was one vision from George Lucas. He knew where stuff was going to go. He knew where characters needed to be. It's like, it seemed more coherent in the prequels. He knew where stuff needed to go. There was a beginning, middle, and end point. With the sequel trilogy, there is no beginning, middle, and end point. It's whatever happens in the movie previous to what you're seeing. Whatever they do, we gotta react from that.
Every movie has its own continuity.
Yeah, and that shouldn't be. This is not a reboot. This is a continuation of the previous 6 movies. This is episode 8. That's what you see in the beginning of these movies. Dun, 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 dun. You see the Star Wars logo, and then what do you see? Episode 7, episode 8, episode 9. When I see that, I have a certain level of expectations of what these movies need to explain or what they need to enhance from the previous movies. From that point, it is a sequel to the previous 6 movies, and these don't feel like sequels to the previous 6 movies. It feels like its own thing. If you wanted to do your own thing, fine. I'm more than happy to see a new interpretation of Star Wars. But since you're telling me this is a continuation of the previous 6 movies, it doesn't flow. It doesn't. As much as I want to defend The Force Awakens, and I even like The Rise of Skywalker, I can't defend its quality that much because it's all over the place. And it's hard to recover from how much of a mess these movies were. Your thoughts?
I mean, when it comes to the lore, yeah, like, the biggest issue and this is, like, kind of going along with the movies, but, like, the biggest issue I had when Disney announced that they were going to be doing a new sequel trilogy was that they were saying that all the expanded universe stuff, all of it, was non-canon, because, like, they already had, like, a vision of, like, and, like, tons of material that they could have brought to the big screen. Like, they could have done, like, if they wanted new main characters, they could have focused on some stuff that happened, like, after Luke established the new Jedi Order and everything. But then, like there's just a lot of stuff that they could have gone off of, is basically what I'm trying to say. But then going with Luke's character, like you touched on there, I also didn't like that. I understand, like, people do lose their hope at sometimes, and sometimes falter and fall. I understand that was kind of what Rian Johnson was trying to get at. But you have this guy who turned one of the most evil people in the galaxy to,
a literal child killer.
Yeah. Like he turned this, like, the most evil person, and, like, one of the most evil people in the galaxy back to the light. But then his nephew has, like, some little thoughts about the dark side, and he's like, yeah, no, gotta kill him. Kind of yeet.
And that idea is not necessarily bad. It's just Ryan needed to explain why.
Well, yes. If they would have explained why, if they would have, like, had, like, a better explanation on, like, why he was so willing to just suddenly make that leap with his nephew, like, yeah, sure, I probably could have believed it, but there was, like, no real proper explanation. It was just, oh, he was having these dark thoughts, I was gonna kill him. Like, really? So, I mean, yeah, no, the lore and, like, different characters and everything have been damaged. But I will say that, like, Han Solo and Leia were represented well. Mm-hmm. Despite the whole Leia flying back to the ship thing. But, those characters were presented well. But Luke Skywalker was, like, the biggest issue I had with the sequel trilogy. And then the fact that they decanonized all of the expanded universe when they could have used that to build up their universe. They could have used that as the base for their movies. They could have used that to explain certain characters' motivations. They could have used, like, Luke Skywalker's Jedi Order from, like, the expanded universe as, like, part of the reason that he may have been so willing to kill Ben Solo. Like, showing what it was he established. Like, they never really showed, like, his Jedi Temple and, like, what it is he made,
Who the fuck are the Knights of Ren?
Yeah!
That's another thing.
Yeah.
I was gonna say that was another thing I was gonna say.
They foreshadowed that
build
the
up.
whole time.
Yep. They build up these characters known as the Knights of Ren, and then they don't show them doing anything besides standing on a mountain and looking menacing.
I mean, that's pretty cool, though.
I mean, yeah, but, like,
show
them doing some stuff. Like, make me respect them,
I mean, we like to see the villains doing villainy things, We like
besides standing on a mountain and looking evil.
It's like Captain Phasma. She did nothing.
Oh my, yeah, and I hate that Phasma is just, it was like another classic nod to the Boba and Jango Fett line of just cool character gets obliterated in a cheesy way.
Yep.
And they brought it back one more time just to do it again.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't just blame Ryan for it anymore because JJ did it in his movies. Like, you introduce cool-looking characters and concepts, but you don't go anywhere with them.
And you're so busy introducing so many new concepts and ideas that you don't bother to elaborate on any of them. It's a lot of quantity, not a lot of quality, I would say.
And as and as Kosa said, like, there's so much interesting stuff with the expanded novels and books that, Disney took the effort to decanonize all of them, but the stuff they decide to give us in replacement of that
isn't been quality at all.
Yeah.
I am sympathetic to that plight, though, because I completely understand from a creative perspective why you need to decanonize it. Like, I understand that decision completely.
I do too.
Oh yeah,
it's frustrating. It's just depressing because you should have given us something good if you're going to take everything away.
Right. I understand the need to decanonize it, But when that stuff that was already canon could have been used to help your movies, they could have been used to help character motivations and everything, especially in the case of Last Jedi, it shouldn't have been decanonized.
I think the problem is too is that there's a need to be original, right? Like you don't want to just be adapting the Star Wars expanded universe novels. People want that, and I want that. But for Disney, I don't think they wanted to do that at all because that's been done before with other franchises.
But then you put in so much effort to have the aesthetic of the original trilogy instead of just expanding on what the prequels did. That doesn't make any sense. Like, because the one thing that people were complaining about with The Force Awakens is that it felt too much like A New Hope. So, like, what?
And I saw...
Yeah. Well, that's a pattern. That's a pattern with like all the films, really, because like Force Awakens feels a lot like A New Hope. Last Jedi feels a lot like Empire Strikes Back, and Rise of Skywalker certainly feels like Return of the Jedi.
Right. So if they're trying to do something new, or if that's what they were trying to do, that's definitely not how to do it. Like.
Well, yeah, like that's the thing. The impression I got was that they were not trying to do something original. They were trying to play it safe because they think that that's what the fans want, when really we do want something original. We want something new. We don't just want a rehash of the original trilogy of films or the prequel trilogy of films. We want, something new.
Yeah.
Well, we like new ideas here at Disney. I mean, I think a part of the problem is that, yeah, they want to play it safe and they want to, they want to make an original idea that is in a safe box because that's the power of Star Wars as a franchise. Unlike Marvel, which has so much continuity and you have to allude to all of it because it's such a niche audience that they happen to break into the mainstream, Star Wars really was this great creative playground that they could have made into something really wonderful for the fans. They could have borrowed references from the books. Even if they made things non-canon, they could have said, but we will be going back and reviewing this content and working it into our canon and seeing what's compatible. Like, I would have loved that because that feels like somebody who's coming in and trying to at least, make peace with the fact that there's years of established fandom here. But instead, it feels like a very bad attempt at trying to appeal to everyone, and it turned Star Wars into more of a marketing gimmick than it ever was. Like, Star Wars has always been like a huge thing for marketing. Again, the Star Wars Holiday Special is an example of just Star Wars for the sake of Star Wars branding. But the new trilogy to me feels the most like it's just there for the sake of, like, we need to sell toys. Man, people aren't playing Disney Infinity. We need to do the Force Awakens set to get people to buy that game. Or, like, it... And I don't mean to be so cynical about it, but, like, that's what I think the most egregious or standing error is for me here.
Yeah. I mean, because, like, yeah, as you said, it's different from Marvel because not a lot of people know about the extended lore of Marvel. Of course you have the comic book guys like myself, but it's like, as far as the general going audience, they're able to accept more of the studios taking liberties with the Marvel properties, because nobody cared about the Avengers until Iron Man came out. It was all about Spider-Man, X-Men, and Fantastic Four. So it's like they were able to do whatever they wanted with the other Marvel characters because they don't expect the wide movie-going audience to know. But with Star Wars, people know the lore. People know it. Like, that's why at the end of the day, you can't please all the Star Wars fans. You can't. There's no way. There's people that will argue that we could, but we can't because there's so many different Star Wars fans. As we've already established, there's the fandom menace that only like the original trilogy and nothing more. There's people that enjoy there's people that enjoy the prequels more than anything else. And there's people that enjoy the sequel trilogy more than anything else. There's people that like Clone Wars and Rebels more than anything from the movies. So it's like, you can't please everyone. But what you should be focused on is making sure there's content for everyone to enjoy. If somebody likes the Clone Wars stuff, give them some Clone Wars related stuff. If people like stuff from the movies from this certain era, give them that. If there's people that like a different era stuff, give them that. Give them variety, is what I'm saying. Don't try to have everything that everyone loves about Star Wars into one movie because it's impossible. That's impossible.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't think it's they try to shove everything into one film. I think it's that they tried to do what, like, they really appealed to the casual audience with the new trilogy, and like you can see that in a lot of like how it feels very well, like, newcomer friendly, and knowing the plan originally to have a second trilogy that would really go into the, like, follow these characters further is, well, or rather another sequel trilogy originally. So I don't know if Disney's gonna stick to that plan now, considering how well this has gone for them. And again, it might just be the Mandalorian dimension. Mandalorian, nothing else.
Well, I mean, you know, supposedly they're supposed to be doing Old Republic stuff, which if they do, I mean, you know, I'll watch it. But
Yeah, I'll watch it too. But
all of us watching with clenched teeth in horror.
I mean, I'm just saying, if they do Revan wrong, I'm gonna be upset. But
Yep.
It'll all depend on who's going to do it, who's going to do those movies, and if Kathleen Kennedy's still here.
And
So,
actually, as a side note, a personal note, I would say, as somebody who is I do love Star Wars, but I would say I'm definitely more of a casual fan of the series. It kind of hurts seeing that these are the movies that were made for the audience like me. Like, my dad made me watch Star Wars. He's a huge fan. I played a lot of the games. Had a couple of those Star Wars Worlds books as a kid. So for me, I was really excited to see what this new trilogy was going to bring, and I didn't mind the first film playing it safe and being like A New Hope. A lot of like really great franchises have to revisit the roots, and I don't think that's a bad idea. I think it's every idea has been done before. It's about how you execute it. So I didn't really care that Force Awakens was like A New Hope because it did it good. Yeah, I like the Force Awakens so much promise and potential.
yeah.
But then it just spiraled and kept spiraling into like a clearly aimless, wandering, and dazed like franchise vision. And that's what's depressing to me, is that the films that were made to welcome people like me most have me mocking them now and like openly saying, like, declaring my dislike and disregard for them, because they're more interesting to me as mistakes than they are as like parts of a franchise that I love.
Yeah.
That's why I think I'm so interested in analyzing the sequel trilogies, because it's such a mess.
Right.
And that is why I'm here. But yeah, like, I don't know. I just don't know how everything could have gone so wrong. And I think the sequel trilogy will never be seen as anything other than a really divisive part of Star Wars fandom history. I can't see a redemption, like a redemption era for these films. I can't imagine people like seeing new Star Wars films and going, man, I wonder how that original sequel trilogy was, or whatever you call this, like the Rey trilogy, whatever the official name for this trilogy is. The Skywalker Saga, I think what it was called at one point. Like, I can't see people looking back on this fondly. I just can't. I can see people liking a film or two, but I can never see everybody agreeing the whole thing was good, because every single one is different.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, it's like for people that don't know Star Wars that much, they probably won't mind the weird stuff going on with these movies, but it's like, if you're trying to introduce people, the new generation, to Star Wars, I don't know if this is it. I don't think that was
not it, Chief.
No, it's like, I would just have them watch the originals, you know, if they want to get on the Star Wars. And that's really sad, though, because I thought it was a good idea at first with Force Awakens to introduce new people, but where it's going now, it's like casuals won't understand what's going on, you know? So it's like, I don't know. So
yeah, see, the casuals don't understand what's going on, and the more horrifying reality, casuals know what's going on and just don't care, because the sequel has given us no reason to care.
Right.
It's just not good enough as a statement.
Yeah, it's trying to do something different, but at the same time, it's riding the coattails of the original. So it's like, who are you trying to please exactly?